The last small spot about life's experiences, little stories, was about Jimmy Carter, the American president, who I've never been able to understand has been so sidelined by American culture. I lived in America for several years while doing a PhD, and I could never understand why many of the wealthy Christians in that country are so viciously opposed to him, because whatever weaknesses there were to Jimmy, he did more to reflect the values of Jesus Christ than any president, certainly in my lifetime. So I've been interested, as I said in my previous message, having sat on the platform and been a presenter in a conference for Habitat for Humanity with Jimmy Carter, and having felt quite thoroughly eclipsed before I got to speak by the magnificence of the address he gave, comparing what are personal values that ought to be the same values that are expressed in a great nation. And I just want to look at something else today that goes on from there. As I said in my previous post, if you want to go back and look up the record of Jimmy's speech on the power crisis, the energy crisis, it certainly came out of a values base, not simply, as our current politicians in my country are saying, out of purely a scientific and pragmatic base, but on the basis of ethical values and respect for this wonderful planet that God has given us. Let me read you a couple of amazing lines from this. He says, "I want to speak to you first tonight about a subject even more serious than energy or inflation." Now there's a challenge, folks. What politician in my country would dare get up and say there's something more important than energy or inflation? He said, "I want to talk to you right now about a fundamental. So I want to speak to you first tonight about a subject even more serious than energy or inflation. I want to talk to you right now about a fundamental threat to our democracy. The threat is nearly invisible in ordinary ways." Now listen to this, folks. It is a crisis of confidence. It is a crisis that strikes at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will. We can see this crisis in the growing doubt about the meaning of our own lives and in the loss of a unity of purpose for our nation. The erosion of our confidence in the future is threatening to destroy the social and political fabric of our nation. Now, I got another one coming after this one, because I want to talk about the new scientific approaches we're hearing much of on radio and on cable television. Because there's a whole scientific thing we need to talk about here. If the universe is simply a gigantic accident, no ultimate meaning or purpose behind it, then in one sense, it's very difficult to logically argue that it matters a hoot whether we screw it up or we don't. But for Jimmy and for me and for many others, including a great many of the greatest scientists in history, even up till our present time, the sense of meaning and purpose in life is more motivational than profitability in the marketplace. Now, here's the beauty I want to finish you with. In the Oval Office one day, Jimmy Carter decided to interrupt the broadcasting of a very famous classic American Western movie. Now, you just don't do this. It was one of these really great American movies, cowboy type movies. And all of a sudden, the ABC news program busted into the middle of this movie from the White House, which Aussies and others mightn't understand, but very significant politically and every other way in American culture. And I just want to give you one paragraph to reflect on. Jimmy said, "In a nation that was proud of hard work, strong families, close-knit communities, and our faith in God, too many of us now tend to worship self-indulgence and consumption. Human identity is no longer defined by what one does, but by what one owns. But we've discovered that owning things and consuming things does not satisfy our longing for meaning. We've learnt that piling up material goods cannot fill the emptiness of lives which have no confidence or purpose. This is not a message of happiness or reassurance, but it is the truth, and it is a warning." You know, what leader in America, Europe, or my country, or anywhere ever dared to stop highly popular television and look into the cameras and give a message like that? The fact is that the scientific evidence, if sociology can be called a science, is that there is no correlation between wealth and power and true inner fulfillment and sense of identity and happiness. There are whole departments in universities in my lifetime have been developed to look at the science of happiness. And Jimmy, back there in the 1970s, it was on the money. Strange term to use when we're talking like this, but it's the phrase we like to use. It really says something, doesn't it? Why do we say on the money? Why don't we say on the truth? Because the truth is, he was right. The piling up of material goods cannot fill the emptiness of lives which have no confidence or purpose. Now, that's not a scientific question. That's a religious, spiritual, and relational question. And poor old Jimmy, when he gave this message on television, he was vilified by so many. In fact, one bloke, I think, wrote a book that said, "What the heck is the president saying?" A whole book on it. But I want to finish by repeating the sentence again, because Australia needs to hear this. Piling up material goods cannot fill the emptiness of lives which have no confidence or purpose. This is not a message of happiness and assurance, but it is the truth. And it is a warning. And the shape of the world right now and my own nation and culture, so many decades after he made that speech, underscores he mightn't have been on the money, but he was on the truth. And they didn't listen then. But I wonder if you would listen now to the significance of what Jimmy said then.